Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stefan and you're watching CNN 8 o'clock news. Our top story tonight: how federal is the Federal Reserve? With the financial crisis at its peak and unemployment rate sky high, several new theories on how this crisis developed have reached the public's attention. One, however, sticks out. Recent documentaries on how a central bank operates have caused a major controversy. Is the new Federal Reserve actually federal, or is it privately owned cartel of the new country's largest banks? Why did President Thomas Jefferson say this? I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to the control to issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people, to whom it properly belongs. We will try to clarify this tonight with the help of our chief financial reporter Vincent Imhoff and the research he and his team have done. This could be one of the most important revelations in history, if not the whole history of the United States. Could this be the beginning of the end of one of the world's biggest cover-ups? Let's have a look on the way we see the Federal Reserve nowadays. People believe that the Federal Reserve is a governmental institution that's act in the best interest of the American people. They control the country's money supply and they have the right to loan out money to starting companies, mortgages, banks, etc. But is this really the case? Vincent Immels will further
That's right,
explain.
Stefan. Now, what exactly is the Federal Reserve? Is it really a governmental institution, or is it something very different? Now, let me first explain what a central bank is. A central bank is a banking institution that produces the currency of a nation. Therefore, they control the money supply. The central bankers also control the interest rate at which money can be loaned out. The Federal Reserve is such a central bank. In fact, it is a cartel of central banks from throughout the United States. So they create every dollar in the States and loan them out at interest to whoever wants to loan the money, even to the US government. But how is this interest paid back? Since the Fed holds the monopoly right over the creating money, they are the only ones the government can turn to get new money, to pay back the earlier interest. This eternal cycle leads only into one thing: eternal debt and dependence on the Federal Reserve, giving them the ultimate power over this country. The founding fathers of the United States were well aware of this threat, as documented in their numerous quotes, one of which Stefan just presented to you. Later in my story I will come back on the creation of the Federal Reserve. Now, by controlling the money supply, the Fed is also able to regulate the value of the money. For example, if you have $15 billion circulating in a nation's economy, those $50 billion are worth something. But if the Fed decides to print out another $50 billion, the total money supply of a nation becomes $100 billion, therefore devaluating the currency, which can have a tremendous effect on the nation's economy. Before the Fed was established, every printed dollar that was made had something to back it up. Gold. It was truly worth something. Nowadays money is not represented by anything anymore, and it's just a piece of paper. Like this piece of paper right here. Money. Worth nothing. It's just a piece of paper backed up by nothing. Now let's continue. There has been a constant struggle between the bankers and the government about the establishment of such a central bank. It seems like that the battle was won by the central bankers in 1913 with the creation of the Fed. The powerful banking families used their connections to create panic in 1907 that the stock market was about to collapse. This caused people to withdraw their money from the banks and in fact a collapse of the system. After the panic of 1907, the bankers pushed forward a proposal of creating one central bank that would control the issuing of money and the money supply. This resulted into the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Major influential families in the banking world helped create the Fed, families such as the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and the Morgans. They agreed with Senator Wilson that he would sign the bill to create the Fed in exchange for financial support for his presidential campaign, thus resulting into Wilson becoming the President of the United States in 1913. He had already agreed on signing the legislation to create the Fed before his presidency. After his presidency, Woodrow Wilson finally found out what he did to his country. He wrote in his memoirs in regret, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and juris of a small group of dominant men. Now, having stated all these facts, could it be that this current financial crisis is another panic of 1907, and that the international bankers of the world will come up with a new 1913, a new solution to the self-created problem? One world bank, one world currency, and eventually one world government, ruled by the ruthless bankers. Back to you, Stefan.
Well, that is certainly an interesting story, Vincent. Could this be reality? Are we really controlled by a few central bankers through the monetary system? Enough information for you to think about, I believe. After the break we will continue with a story about Mexican flu, which has already caused 200 million deaths around the world. Stay with CNN.